Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Week 4 recap for the League of Ordinary Gentlemen. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is my favorite. I actually didn't say it to y'all, but I said it to your commissioner. This is my favorite league to recap. I really like the interaction that y'all do. I feel like everyone makes a lot of moves, which I appreciate, and I like the scoring for this league. It's a little bit different than what I've experienced, especially with the quarterbacks being weighted so heavily. And I think a lot of people benefited from it this week, so we'll be talking about that. Also, in the background, I haven't even told him this yet, but I have a friend who knows a lot about fantasy as well. If I say anything that he strongly disagrees with, he will come onto the camera and tell me why I'm wrong. But he also might not at any point. But I know he's listening. He's working on his own thing, so there's a chance that he's just not going to be able to hold it back because we always disagree about fantasy things. So we may get a feature as well. If not, we live together now, so you might get that in future weeks. But without further ado, we will jump into the recap. And the first game we're going to be recapping, we'll give it an order, will be Team the Prophet versus Chairman. Then we're going to be talking Banditos versus Paintrine. Then Paco Libre versus Straight Knockout, which is a new name for Paco Libre, and it mixed me up for a second. But I know now that was the old former Pac to the future. And then the fourth game is Professor S versus We Went with Jared. Fifth game would be TBD, which now I learned means titties up, undies down. So thank you for the description there, because I've been very unsure what the catches up, whatever, how I used to pronounce it, meant. I still don't know how that means that, but at least I know now what it does mean. Versus El Capitan. So, starting off with Team the Prophet versus the Chairman. Team the Prophet gets the win to go to 3-1. This was a game against for two Titans, two very strong teams. Team the Prophet gets the win, 184 to 164. Two very strong performing teams this specific week, but also two strong teams overall. The highlight for Team the Prophet here was there's a few things to talk about here. I guess the first thing we'll talk about is Montgomery. Montgomery last week is a guy I said I like a lot. I think his usage is going to go up a ton with both the injury to Tariq Cohen and Foles becoming the starting quarterback. So I was right in that regard, but the production wasn't there yet. He had a decent week. He got 10.7, not great, but decent. But he was third in overall snap count for running backs last week. I think he was around 85%, which is very strong and a really good sign. So while you're disappointed with 10.7, at least slightly, not devastated, but disappointed, there's a lot of promise with David Montgomery moving forward. Maybe he's not the most talented running back, but there's no one else competing for snaps there. He's officially a bell cow, and it's really tough to get a bell cow running back here. So I'd be happy if I'm Team the Prophet with that. Secondly, I don't know if it was for this league because I do review a couple leagues, but I believe I have talked about how high I am on Will Fuller in the past. He's been my best value pick for every league when I did a post-draft recap for, and he's finally showing us why that is. He had a weird week a couple weeks ago because of a hamstring where he got 0, but outside of that, he's been productive. This week, very productive. 6 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown, 27.8 points. So that's another really good high note for Team the Prophet. We said this last week, but it hasn't been done yet, so I'm going to keep pressing it until you make the move. But it's time to trade Aaron Rodgers. You have Mahomes. You do not need Mahomes and Rodgers. In a league where quarterback's so important, I have to imagine other teams would do a lot to get Aaron Rodgers, or at least I would recommend other teams do. So because of that, I think you're in a good position to trade for a higher quality guy. It's not like you're really lacking in depth, so I think what this team might want to do is try and package a couple guys, Aaron Rodgers and maybe a wide receiver running back for a little bit better of a wide receiver running back. But all this is to say that I think this team's in a really good position now at 3-1, and with that depth, especially at quarterback, and Montgomery's potential ceiling being higher to be a contender this year. Speaking of who to upgrade, I actually think running back is the call here. You're a little bit deeper on wide receiver, and Devin Singletary will see Zach Moss coming back, and I'm not so confident with Singletary with Zach Moss coming back. So I see Singletary and Rodgers for a stronger running back being a really good option for this team. With all that said, just my opinion, but a lot of opportunity with Team the Prophet now at 3-1. On the flip side of that, the Chairman loses, gets his first loss of the season, and goes to 3-1. The disappointment here is in Matt Ryan, only 10.4 points. 2 touchdowns taken by Gurley, not by Matt Ryan. Green Bay's defense looked really good. Matt Ryan had a lot of pressure, but there were some throws that were really concerning. Matt Ryan didn't react well to the pressure, throwing off his back foot sometimes, not sending his feet kind of thing. So Matt Ryan, a little bit of concern, ekes in, but still I think definitely a fantasy starter, so I wouldn't be too concerned there. This is the team that we said Humphries doesn't make sense, but fortunately you made the change there. You dropped Humphries, I saw. You started DJ Chark like we recommended. I'm happy you went with it. Got 29.5 points. The Chark-McLaurin combo worked out well for you. They're in very similar positions where they're target beasts and they're very talented wide receivers in situations that aren't ideal. So the fact that you were able to get 23 total targets for both these guys is a really good sign. The issue here is that they're on those offenses, so there might be inconsistent production. So that's your wide receiver group that, similar to actually Devontae Parker, they're all in very similar situations. Wide receiver ones on bad offenses, but all teams that are also playing from behind. So I think fantasy-wise, that's a solid and serviceable wide receiver core to pair with Kenny Golladay in a league where you're now starting 3 wide receivers and a flex, so you basically have 4 wide receivers. So there's a lot on that. So I'm happy you're in a good position there to pair with running backs. James Robinson, we talked about last week, one of the better pickups of the season, to pair with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think this is a solid team. You're at 3-1, first loss of the season. But I think our team upgraded a bit with this wide receiver situation, and I'm a lot higher on this team than I was last week, even though you got the loss this week. You obviously performed well, and I think both these teams are teams we'll see in the playoffs and will be contenders moving forward. Second matchup between the Banditos and Pain Train. The Banditos getting the loss, going to 0-4. We done-chained them last week, and we're feeling really good about that done-chain, unfortunately, right now. We do not like some of these starts that came in this week, mainly being Russell Gage. I understand it because Ridley and Julio were banged up, but Gage is the 4th option on that offense. It was against a good defense. I just don't think Gage is startable right now. Maybe if you know Ridley or Julio are going to miss a game for sure, it could be a decent start, but if they're both starting, even if they're banged up, Gage is just not going to see the snaps to be productive. Only 3 targets this game, 22 yards. Actually had 1 carry for -2 yards, so only 4 points. That obviously hurt your team a ton. You lost by a mile, so that's not going to be something it's going to keep you up at night, but is something that you might want to think about moving forward. And then I think I've said in this week before, but my least favorite football player / fantasy player right now is Nyheim Hines. You gave him the start, only 7.8 points. I don't understand the Nyheim Hines starts. I do have, again, few recaps, and everyone always starts Nyheim Hines, and I feel like I'm always talking about how much I don't like Nyheim Hines. And I know hindsight's 20/20, and I could say that more confidently now than ever. Maybe he goes for 40 next week just because I'm saying this. But I think if you want to be a contender, which it seems it's a long shot for this team, but if you want to switch it around, I don't think Nyheim Hines is going to be part of that. So I know you have an injury to Mostert. I know you have an injury to A.J. Brown, but I think there's some moves that this team has to make if they want to even slightly remove that done chain. Like take it off the chest, still have it around the neck, but not like fully down on your chest. I think it's something you need to talk about or think about. For the Pain Train, huge win, 200 points, massive beast of a week to go to 3-1. This team is a contender. I love this team. I don't know if I've said it before. I think this might be my favorite team. Something we talked about last week is Mike Evans taking a step up because Godwin's out, and you definitely saw that. So great start, of course. Great guy to roster at this point and have as a stud. While Godwin's out, I think he's a lot better, of course. I think everyone thinks that. So he got you 30.2 points. You being able to pair him with Metcalf is absolutely stellar. The issue for you is in this league, you need to start 3 wide receivers, and unfortunately for you, that 3rd wide receiver right now is A.J. Green. So that's not good because A.J. Green's not a great option. Boyd's clearly the favorite option on that offense that I don't even like that much. The good news for you is you have a ton of wide receiver options. You got T.Y. on the bench, Edelman on the bench, Anthony Miller on the bench, Mecole Hardman on the bench. Especially with those first 2 in T.Y. and Julian Edelman, I think you're probably feeling okay about your wide receiver position. You're going to have to make the right decisions, but you have that depth to make up for the fact that your 3rd slot is really weak. Ideally for you, you're able to trade a few of those guys for one really strong guy, but that's going to be tough to do. So a lot's going to be on Team Pain Train to make the right decision at wide receiver. But with that being said, the rest of your team's just crazy good. Aaron Jones, Dalvin at running back, Kyler Murray at quarterback. I like Higbee at tight end. Disappointing week, but still a really good option. Mike Davis at the flex. This, simply put, is the best team in the league. So congratulations on the win. You're at 3-1 now, and I expect to see you, of course, in the playoffs. And just like the first 2 teams I reviewed, I expect this team to be in the conversation for making the finals and potentially winning it. I think it's a really, really good team. So congratulations to Team Pain Train and the Banditos. Thoughts and prayers. Third game between Paco Libre and Team Straight Knockout. Paco Libre with the loss to go to 1-3. The concerns here around Kenyon Drake continue. 3.5 for a guy who's supposed to be a bell cow is just obnoxiously bad. 0 targets in the passing game. This is a guy who averaged, I think, over 2 targets or 2 catches, maybe 5 targets last season. I need to remind myself what that was. But Kenyon Drake was very much part of the passing game. I think we talked about this last week, but the concern here is that Kyler Murray's taking some of those touchdowns. They have such strong receivers that those guys are getting the receptions. What's the role for Kenyon Drake? Right now, it's really just running the ball, and at 13 carries, only getting 35 yards is incredibly, incredibly frustrating, especially in an offense where your quarterback's a threat to run the ball. Also, Kenyon Drake should have more opportunity to run, but it seems like they might be stacking the box a little bit. I'm actually not really watching these games, but I'm just shocked that 13 carries translated into 35 yards. You have to keep starting him. You have to hope that that he just improves his productivity. Fortunately for you, the injury he had was reported to only be the wind being knocked out of him, so he's healthy. I think your team ride or dies with your running back combo, and that Kenyon Drake, David Johnson are just both guys who are disappointing a little bit. David Johnson, with Bill O'Brien being fired, we'll see what happens. I don't know if it's going to help or hurt. I can see it hurting because Bill O'Brien really had to get DJ involved because his name was on the line because he traded DeAndre Hopkins for him. But David Johnson still looks like he's a solid back, so hopefully they're able to find in a good offense some room for him to improve. I also have been talking a lot about my right decisions. I'll talk about where I was wrong. I was wrong with Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson having 17.9 in this league, which is very solid. It is a full PPR league, and he's getting the targets. 11 targets is a ton. I'm surprised by that production. I personally don't like him moving forward, but I was wrong, so maybe I'll continue to be wrong. And pairing him with DeAndre Hopkins obviously puts you in a good position. You have a lot of wide depth as well. You have Ronald Jones on the bench, who's a great option. Mark Ingram, who I don't like this season, but is obviously a good option if you need to play him. Debo's coming back, which is a really good option for you as well. So, and Michael Thomas being injured, he's coming back as well. So this is the deepest team in the league, in my opinion. You do get the loss to go to 1-3, but I still view this team as a playoff potential team. I just think a lot similar to the team we just talked about. A lot's going to come down to the start-sit decisions because of your depth and a lot of good options, and then of course that running back production that is sexy names, but you just need them to produce. Any disagreements yet, Elon Grobart, my roommate? No disagreements. Everything I said is right, apparently. Okay, so Team Straight Knockout gets the win to go to 2-2. Looking at your running backs, I think a lot of people wouldn't think that you were going to win this week. You started Jamal Williams and McKinnon. And then also in the flex, you had Renfro to pair up with a wide receiver start of D. Shepard on Green Bay. So a lot of very questionable decisions, but I guess they weren't really decisions. Devontae was out. Lazard was out. Someone else was out, I believe. James Connors had the postponement, and Sony Michel was out. So, in a team decimated by injuries, we just have to applaud you for being able to get a win together. Jamal Williams turning out to be a fantastic start at 18.5. Obviously, not the lineup you're going to want to play moving forward, but you got the win and obviously managed your team very effectively. The injuries have been decimating you, but Kittle's back. He got you a ton. McKinnon actually ended up being, I think, number 1 in overall snap count this week among running backs. So if that could continue, you're in a good position. I think you're doing a great job filling in for injuries, but there's going to be week-to-week decisions also while guys start getting easing themselves in. If you play the lineup you have right now, it's not a playoff team, but with the guys you have coming back, I also could see this as a team that could potentially fight for a playoff spot. I just can't believe that this lineup with Shepard, Jamal Williams, Gallup, and Renfro got the win. But kudos to you, and hopefully your guys get healthy soon. Now that you're at 2-2 and obviously a contender to make the playoffs. Next game, Professor S versus We Went with Jared. 2 strong performances again. Professor S gets the win to go to 4-0. I said last week when you went to 3-0, this is not looking like a 3-0 team. But now you are looking like a 4-0 team because your 2 guys who were the biggest question marks, Mixon and Odell, go off. Mixon 46 points, Odell 40 points. You have to feel very, very good about that. I do think Ridley was a bad play this week. Hindsight 2020, very easy to say. But a banged-up Ridley obviously didn't work out and was a risky play by you. But you could say the same thing about Chris Carson. Chris Carson was injured, but you started him and got 25 points. So 2 situations where you had a guy coming into the game banged up. You made the right decision with one, didn't make the right decision with the other. The thing with Chris Carson is that they did say that Hyde would be out, and it was indicated that Chris Carson would be very involved, so I guess that was kind of an easier call. Ridley, it was very clear that he was banged up, so questionable call there, but Ridley should be serviceable moving forward. Your bench options are also really strong with Josh Kelly coming in now. You have him with Eckler hurt. Latavius is serviceable, but probably way behind Josh Kelly, and then Gibson, who now seems to be the number 1 option on Washington, and Jameson Crowder on the bench as well. So I actually owe this league an apology. I was wrong when I said that the other team was the deepest team in the league. This is the deepest team in the league. You also have Godwin, who's out on injured reserve. Unbelievably deep. You're at 4-0. You're looking like a 4-0 team. I will say that Mixon-Odell combo, you won't get 40 out of them every week. So because they're so inconsistent, it's not a team that's a cinch to be overly productive. But if you're Professor S, you're sitting back really pretty right now at 4-0. Nearly a guarantee to make the playoffs with the strength of your team paired with your current record. So congratulations to you, deepest team in the league. Sorry to the other team, you're actually the second deepest team in the league. We went with Jared on the flip side of that with a loss and going to 1-3. Devastation strikes with Nick Chubb being injured. Very, very tough. Your team was obviously heavily dependent on Nick Chubb, especially with other injury concerns being Julio on the other end. He was a risk also to play, but I understand it. I would have started Julio as well. The good news for your team is Allen Robinson, as we talked about last week, with Foles and at QB, with Tariq being injured, just becomes an absolute wide receiver 1 stud, potential top 5 wide receiver this year, and he did exactly what you'd expect. 10 targets, 7 catches, 101 yards, 1 touchdown. So that's great news for you, but unfortunately it's tough to view you as a contender right now with Julio being banged up and Nick Chubb out. As you look to who you're going to plug in on the bench, I do not like the options at all. Le'Veon will come back. I don't love that option. He'll be banged up, but he's eyeing a return next week, so maybe that's someone you could plug in. In the flex, you put John Brown in for Julio if he's out, or for Chubb, and then you plug in Le'Veon. Unfortunately, while we did like this team last week, with the injuries now, we do not like this team as much. Yes, with Russell Wilson at quarterback and the guys we mentioned, Zeke and others, it's not like the team's done. Definitely not done chaining, but in a real tough spot. That Chubb injury is real tough luck for Winwood Jared. We'll see how he rebounds next week to see if he could bounce back and get back into the playoff conversation. The final game is between TBD, so Titties Up and Undies Down, versus El Capitan. TBD with the loss to go to 2-2. The draft steal, the best value pick probably that we're going to be talking about all season long is Josh Allen. He gets you another monster week, 30 points this week. Really, really strong. I will say he's probably better actually in other leagues, because in your league you get 6 points for quarterback throwing touchdowns and 6 points for running touchdowns. In a league like mine, he's actually more valuable because his rushing touchdowns, like he got last week, are more valuable compared to passing touchdowns. So with that being said, he's still getting you the touchdowns. It doesn't matter if it's rushing or passing. He's getting you the touchdowns. He gets you 30 points this week. So that's looking good for you. Unfortunately, that's really all we could talk about. You got the loss to go to 2-2, only putting 90 points. 90 points. The Eckler injury is really tough, and you obviously don't have Josh Kelly because the guy we just talked about has Josh Kelly. So that's really tough for you. Josh Jacobs disappointing, but you expect more production out of him. DJ Moore, as we talked with Robbie Anderson, it seems like Robbie Anderson's now the wide receiver 1 for that team. I like DJ Moore a little bit more still moving forward. More. That's not a pun intended, but it's just a lot of things on this team that appear to be pretty frustrating. At 2-2 now with a really poor week, there's just a lot of question marks. Hollywood Brown is a guy I'm really high on, and he got you a decent week this week. You start him in the flex. I like that start, 12.6. But another back-to-back weeks where there were 2 times in each week that he should have had a touchdown, but Lamar Jackson is just missing him right now. Hopefully, if they begin to hit, Hollywood will become a great option for you. And he's still startable, of course. He got you 4 catches on 8 targets, which is a ton for the Baltimore offense. That doesn't even throw that much, for 86 yards. But the 12.6, you obviously want more in a full PPR league. So hopefully he could become more productive. Just too many question marks on this team right now at 2-2 to be feeling super confident about it. There are other teams I just feel better about. The team has potential, but something to add on to all of this, you do have Melvin on the bench, who did well, but with Lindsey coming back, I wonder if Melvin's going to be as productive also. He was probably a start last week. I did say in last week's recap that I didn't love Melvin once Lindsey comes back. I do think he was startable this week before Lindsey comes back. Once Lindsey gets back, probably startable, but something to keep an eye on. So another team with just a ton of question marks just across the board. Josh Allen won't be able to do it all for you. With only 90 points and falling to 2-2, immediate action probably needed from this team. Hopefully make the right start-sit decisions, but right now the ceiling's lower than other teams, unfortunately. The final team is Team El Capitan, the second team that we've done chain, finally gets his first win to go to 1-3. I'm hoping that El Capitan could prove me wrong with my done chain. I still think it's a done chain team. I mean, looking at this team, it's shocking that you got the win also, similar to the other team. The guys you started, your starting lineup was Darrell Henderson, Rex Burkhead, CeeDee Lamb, Kendrick Bourne, Cole Beasley. Those 5 guys started for this team, and they got the win. Dak Prescott, a major part of that 50 points. He's not going to get you that every week. His schedule is easing up a bit, so they're not going to be playing from behind and getting all this catch-up, garbage time touchdowns. So curious to see how your team does without Dak. Of course, a lot of this has to do with injury. You'll get McCaffrey back later in the season. You'll get Juju off a bye next week. And you get Kareem Hunt now, who's going to be in for that Chubb injury. So you got a massive break there. So yes, I'm going to keep the done chain on, but you're looking a lot better now that Kareem Hunt's going to be involved. And we're getting closer to the McCaffrey return. With that being said, I don't think there's a playoff team just yet. If you could keep your head over water until you get McCaffrey back, yes, you're alive. But I don't view this as a playoff team as well. So with that being said, congrats on your first win. Done chain's still on your neck. Hopefully you prove me wrong, but we'll see. So with that being said, Elon, any other thoughts for this league? Anything you've heard that you want to add on?
I'm also surprised about Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
But happy to see that he's making a name for himself with a better quarterback that he's playing with.
And do you think that DJ Moore is still a startable player with Robbie Anderson's production?
I'd say no.
No, we got a no for DJ Moore being startable. So I'd say yes, monitor week to week. I might start him if I don't have better options. I forgot which team. Was it the team we just talked about? Yeah. So your options, if you want to take him out, would be this is talking about TBD. Your options would be youch. Oh well, you play the wide receiver in your flex. You could play Melvin instead, which I think we'd both go Melvin for now over DJ Moore. You go Swift, you go Marvin Jones. The only guy you probably want to do is Melvin right now, so that might be worth talking about. But any other thoughts?
No.
Great. Okay, well, congrats to all the winners, to all the losers. Apologies. Not apologies, that wasn't my fault. But best of luck moving forward. I'll see y'all in future weeks, and good luck moving forward. Bye.